Hello everyone, it's Gelli here from funcraftstodoathome.com, back with another video for you. This time I'm going to show you how to create art journal pages and bind them together to create an art journal that you can doodle in and add pictures to and use exactly how you want. Now don't forget, if you don't want the sound on this video, you can turn it right down and switch on the subtitles and everything I say will come up on the screen. In my last video, I promised you that in this video I would show you how I paint my folded journal pages, and I also promised you that I would show you how I bind my journal pages into art journals. Now, the journal pages that you see here have been painted with better quality acrylics, but the painted journal pages you see here were created using the cheapest craft supplies and paints that you will find anywhere. I got them in Poundland in the UK, probably the US equivalent would be the dollar store, and you can see here that the cheap paints give you a very different look to the painted journal pages that I showed you in the beginning. So basically I wanted to set out to prove that you could go and buy very cheap craft supplies and actually produce something and have fun at the same time. There is quite a marked difference between the different kinds of paint that you use. Now, the paint that I used on this art journal page was a better quality paint. So I'm just quickly going to show you how I did this one with the better paint, so you can see the difference. To get the page that I just showed you with the stars on, I used my Gelli plate to put a base layer of red first of all, and I used white card and I used the flat side of a massage ball to smooth it all down. And then I use yellow to get the stripes on either side of the page. I wasn't really impressed with this yellow. I've got so many paints kicking around, I never know which one I've used if I try and recreate something I've already done. So I'm not that, I mean it's okay, it's not bad, but I just gave it a go with this one that's a bit brighter. Just did it over the top. Oh yeah, that's better. You can go over anything that you're not happy with. I will be putting details in my blog about Gelli plate printing. And my blog, in case you don't know, is www.funcraftstodoathome.com. I'm just cleaning off my Gelli plate with baby wipes so that I can put my next lots of paint down to create the stars on the art journal page. I made these star stamps from foam stars that I also got in Poundland. And all I did was cut out circles of card, quite stiff card. I stuck the stars on them and then I put some double-sided tape on the back so they easily stick to my finger. Pick up the paint. Anyway, it makes quite nice little stars on there. So simple to do this and so cheap. And if the pad loses its sticky, it doesn't stick to your finger anymore, you just simply put some more double-sided tape on there. I'm being very random with this. I mean, I'm probably not even going to use this page, but just wanted to show you how you can very easily create art journal pages, even if you think you're not particularly artistic. You can't really go wrong with a Gelli paint pad, to be honest. So I'm going to do the same thing now with the smaller star to get my red stars down the side. And of course, where I am lifting the paint here, you can afterwards, if you want to, you can pull a print from that so that you will get the negatives of the stars. Anyway, you get the picture. They're just foam stars. You can get about 100 in a packet for £1 at Poundland, or 50 or something like that. They've also got hearts as well, so you could do hearts. Anyway, time to get on with the challenge that I set myself to use the cheapest art supplies I could find. For £7 in Poundland, I got these greeting card blanks, which are brown, a selection of acrylic paints, these small squeezy paint tubes, and the larger paint tubes with metallic paint in. And I have to say, these paints were really hard to work with because they don't have much pigment in them, and particularly the metallic ones are quite slimy. The ones in the small tubes were quite sticky, but I did manage to produce an art journal. And although the album that you see me binding in this video was made entirely using the brown coloured card, in this video I wanted to show you what happens to the colours when you put them onto white card. They're not quite so muddy. So how do I create my art journal pages? Well, as you saw earlier, I use one of these Gelli plates. I have been neglecting this lately, but I am doing more and more now. And those who aren't familiar with mono printing, as it's called, you can see here you just put small amounts of paint onto your gel plate, which I will have a link to on my blog. So these paints went on really sticky and patchy, so I got quite a patchy print. But what I did, I cheated. I didn't get this from Poundland, I got this from Hobbycraft, and it's a gloss gel medium. And I thought perhaps if I coated the gel press with very, very thin coating of the gel and then put colours on, it would probably be less patchy. And because I used up the acrylic tubes from Poundland making that first album that you see me binding a bit later on, I went and bought another set of the acrylic tubes, which is what I'm using here. And they did in fact go on better on top of the gel gloss medium. And you can see here, because the colours that I've used are both warm colours and they're on a piece of card that's also a warm colour, you can't really see what it's done. So I am reapplying the colours and I'm going to show you what they look like on white card. And obviously you can see the colours better here, but they're still not that, they're not particularly bright colours, and I think it's because those cheap paints obviously lack pigment. Because if you look at these pages that I've done with more expensive paints, you know, they're much more vivid. just picking up the rest of the paint that's left on the gel pad because I don't like to waste anything. And this is actually how I build up my backgrounds for my art journal pages. Now, because the colours show up better on white, it did cross my mind that maybe I could put a thin layer of gesso onto brown cards that I had bought. So that's what I'm doing here. And bear in mind that the gesso was only a base, and you can see here that from having that base you go on to put down other colours which obviously are going to look brighter because it's a white base instead of brown. Here I am using an offcut of a table underlay that's got a textured geometric design to it. And this is how it works. You start off with your base colours, and then you can do things like I'm doing here, where you're using the paint that's left around the edges of the gel plate to create more interest and more depth, more layers on that base. And this is the fun part of monoprinting. You can do as many or as few layers as you want. And it's really relaxing, it's good fun. There's no right or wrong. Yeah, it's brilliant. I love monoprinting. Because like you can see here, with me using this geometric design offcut again, this print here, I really hated what I'd done. It was horrible, it was muddy, it was a mess. And so here I am in the process of covering up the parts that I really didn't like, which is that horrible muddy green base. But that is what happens, unfortunately, when you do use cheap paints. And I ended up having to use lots of white to try and lift the muddiness. And there's loads more that I could have done to improve these pages if I wasn't limiting myself to only using the £7 worth of materials that I bought from Poundland. So, you know, I would have used lots of gold metallic on here and really made them look superb. I could leave this page like that because there's lots of white room there to doodle on once it's bound into an art journal. This really is a lovely way to create, because if you think you're not creative or you're not really very good with paints, it's just brilliant. Gelli plate's brilliant. And it's the exact opposite of acrylic pouring, because with acrylic pouring you need tons and tons of paint, whereas with this, on the Gelli plate, you only need a few drops spread very thinly. I just wanted to show you the metallic paint that I got from Poundland in the larger tubes. This paint was absolutely awful. It was slimy, it wouldn't actually spread properly. I really didn't like working with that paint at all. But having said all that, once it was dry, it did give the prints a lovely metallic-y sheen, but I still wouldn't want to work with it again. No, I wouldn't want to work with it again. It was just awful on the gel plate. But it was only £1, so what do you expect? I'm just going to show you here some of the stencils. I cut these stencils myself, and I used them in my gel plate printing. So I'm basically just showing you can use anything as a mask or a stencil. Just very quickly showing you different ways to get some patterns and designs down onto your journal pages. So don't forget that once you've bound your journals, you're still going to doodle in them, and you're still going to stick pictures in them. So you kind of do need to leave them a bit plain, so that you have got room to add to them. And any pages that you don't really like, when you are journaling, you can always take the roller and just put a block of colour over a bit that you don't like, so that you can either write on there or stick a picture on there or something. So, you know, these are I'm just very quickly showing you techniques here for, you know, adding some interest to your journal pages. But as I said, you know, you don't want to make them too fussy, because you want to leave room to add to them once they are actually bound into journals. And you just want to pick your journal up one day and add a few words, add some pictures. And so you want to keep your backgrounds fairly plain, because if you have, you know, if you make spectacular pages, you're not going to want to cover them up. Well, that's what I've found. If you keep them a bit plainer. But aside from anything else, even if you never do anything in your art journals once they're bound, the process of making them is very, very therapeutic, or I find it's very therapeutic, because you get lost in mucking around with the paint. So when you finally finish the front and back of all your pages, if you're not going to put a cover on, which I didn't on the one that I bound, then you need to find the pages that are going to be the front and the back covers, and you need to cover them in Mod Podge Glossy. That's what I did, just to protect the front of them. And once you've done that, you're good to go. You can start to bind. So there's all my pages that I want to bind. I've got my shiny front cover and my shiny back cover, and I've already created my binding holes. And if you aren't sure how to do that, you can have a look at the video I did before this one to find an easy way to do that. There should be an info card come up on the screen round about now to tell you how to get there. And now, ta-da, we can get on with the binding. So you need some wax binding thread, you need a binding needle that's got a fairly blunt point, and you need to put a knot in your thread which is single. We're not going to do this with double thread, this is just single. And watch what I do here, it's self-explanatory. You start with the back cover, or sorry, you start with the card that is going to go in the back. And so the right hand half of that will be the back cover, which is the bit that you've done with the Mod Podge. So all you're doing is coming through the first hole. It looks quite complicated because I have got a very long piece of thread there. I think it was about 7 feet long. And what you're aiming to do is have a teeny little loop left on the spine of this card. Tiny little loop like that, sticking out of the first 3 binding holes on the first card. So I'm going to do the same thing with the second and third holes until I have my loop sticking out along the spine. and the loops need to stick out from the first, second and third holes. The fourth one, we're just going to bring the needle through and then we're going to put the next page on. So your thread has come through the first page, through from the inside and the fourth hole, and now you're putting the second page on top and you are passing the thread back through to the center through what would be, I suppose, the fourth hole. If we're going back the other way, we're going to go 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's the fourth hole in the second card. I'm going to go back through there, and then out again through the third hole, and then what you're going to do is pass the thread up through the loop that you left sticking out of the spine, and then once you've hooked that loop with your thread, you're going to go back in through that third hole, which is why you need a fairly blunt needle. This doesn't work very well if you have a pointed needle. It can pierce the thread and you have all sorts of problems. So then you just do that with the remaining holes in that second card. So out through the second hole, and actually went directly into that loop, so I'm just passing the needle back through that second hole now because I've already caught the loop. Out again through the first hole and through that loop. It's now time to put the third card on, so that the third, you would normally call these signatures, but they're not signatures because they're only made of single pages. So it's the third page that you're putting on now. So you're going back in there through the first hole, and then from here on, because there's no loops, you're just going to pass the needle round the previous stitch, just like you see me doing here, and then you're going to go back in through the second hole, and come across on the inside of the page to the third hole, come out of there, round that previous stitch, back in through the third hole, and then across inside to the fourth hole, round the previous stitch, and then it's time to put your fourth page in. So just carry on like this until you've stitched all of your pages together. When you get to the final page, you just need to bring your thread in through the last hole and then just push the needle under the thread like this and tie a knot, pull it tight, and you're done. You only need to do one knot because the wax thread, once you've pulled a tight knot, it doesn't go anywhere. So all that was left now was to put something around the spine. Now at first I chose this painted paper that I'd done. I wanted to use this really strong black tape on the spine of the album, so because it's really heavy duty, as you can see, and so what I did was I stuck 2 strips of double-sided tape to the outside of the black tape, and then I stuck the strip of coloured paper on the back of the black tape. And don't forget, if you want to know more about Gelli plate printing or where you can get hold of them, please visit my blog www.funcraftstodoathome.com, and there you will find information and links. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon for regular updates of my new videos, and please don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.